Hi, greekgooner. So, I've had another look at your file. I'm using my 2015, so it opened with some errors. So, I don't have a skin cluster on this, if that was in this file, but that's fine. I'll just make one anyway to show what's going on. Another thing, you really shouldn't have all this history on your file, like on your mesh. When you want to skin a mesh, you want the history to be completely obliterated. You don't want any like poly splits or polyunite or anything on it. So I'm just going to do that real quick before I do anything else, so that now I have a nice clean mesh. Also, you should really model your character across the or at the origin, so that just makes everything a lot easier to mirror over. Um, if you got controls and stuff as well, unless you do a bit more like fancy scripting. Um, yeah, so you basically want this to be like around here. So if I just parent this real quick, move it over, I just unparent that, and I freeze my transformations. Just that I've got it at the center, it just makes it a bit easier. Not sure if these are actually used for anything in this file, but I also noticed that you got scales on the boy, so make sure that you freeze out those so that those are 1. You don't really want any values on your mesh at all when it's at the origin. So I'll just hide these for now because I don't know what's going on with those. I'll do the joints just a bit bigger, just to show them. I'll just put on a flat shader for now. So I'll do just a quick skin to get these joints doing something. So I'll just do joint hierarchy. I like to do closest distance and then use a max influence of 1 to just get a really quick rough skinning, and then you can fix it from there. So yeah, now we got this going on. So let's have a little look around here now. So if I take this, it's completely solid around there and there. And yeah, so if I take this and do the 0.5, oh sorry, 0.5, just flood it so that it's doing that 50% in between. Sorry, and this is what we're getting. Right, so it's not pretty. What you can do, like I mentioned previously, is to just add in that little helper joint. That would probably really help a lot. So let's just do that. I'm also just going to like group this under a locator real quickly. So I'll do that. Just do point control and maintain offset to get that up there. Turn that off. And what's the left arm IK? And yeah, just do that so that we just got clean values on this, so I can easily come back to this position. Oops, sorry. Now I wanted to go on the shape. Cool. So let's just work with the mesh that you have now to see what we can do. So I'll duplicate out this elbow joint and I'll just delete everything underneath it. Just call it like elbow half joint, and I will select these two to be the drivers for this orient constraint. Maintain offset off, and then I will add this in so that when we do this, I can say this edge loop should be following the left elbow half joint, and I'll do it to 100%. So already that's looking a lot better for the back side of it. So I'd really recommend that you do something like that. You can see now we're looking a lot better for that. And for the inner part, we can just do like a really quick setup of a blend shape. So if I duplicate this out, just unlock these to move it a bit away. I add this as a blend shape to this, and I want to do it as a front of chain. That basically just puts the blend shape before the skin cluster. So what I want to do is just to put this into a position where it looks a bit wonky. Now this is like the really cheaty way of doing it. By what you really want to do is make a corrective in that pose, and then you would figure out like the actual difference between these. But right now I'm just gonna do a quick little a blend shape here to move this about a bit to demonstrate what you can do. So I'll go in and I'll turn on this blend shape. See that? I want to move these a bit up, move these a bit down as well. Probably a bit too much for these. We want them to be nicely in between here, so I'm just gonna scale them a bit in. So now we're getting a much nicer elbow, and we can also just pull this back part out a tiny bit. Just get a bit more like a sharper elbow. This is like the nice way about like this end part here now. If we just do like most of this with the joint, that will just work all the time when you move your skeleton around. It's just going to interpolate nicely, while a blend shape can activate a bit strangely. You can get a lot of really strange things going on. So blend shapes are great for doing just a last level detailing, but I really prefer to have like joints driving my overall shape, having all the like overall volume deformation being done by joints, and then you just do like a second pass of like blend shapes on top of that just to make it look a bit nicer. So this looks a lot better now, a lot better. So even if I do like a 90-degree, perhaps even wanna push these out a bit more, do something like that, perhaps push this even further out. Yeah, so just for a 90-degree bend, it holds up now. So I'm just saying that I'm happy with that for now. But now the question is, how do we drive this? Because if we go back to our original position now, we basically have this. So what we want is for the rotation of this to drive the blend shape. And to do that, we're going to do set driven key. So we're going to go to animate. I'm going to do set driven key and set. That gives you this window where here you load in the objects and their attributes that you want to drive a bunch of other objects and their attributes. So what we want is this to load as the driver, sorry. And then we want to go in and select the blend shape and load that as the driven. So we want to do the rotate Y. See, it's rotate Y when we go back to this pose. It's rotate Y. So we want to take the rotate Y of the left elbow, and we want that to drive the mom character 5, which is just this. And if you gave this a better name, it would show up properly here as well. But for now, we're just going to keep it like this. So what's really important to do when you're doing set driven keys is to set a base pose. So we want this, it's completely on, this is at 0, then we want this to be at 0 as well. So we've got the driver and the attribute, and the driven and the attribute, and we do key, and you can see that my blend shape now is key. So now we go back into the pose. That's almost 90-degree angle, and we go in and we turn on this and we do another key, and now you will see this blend shape turning on as we rotate in. You can see it's a bit swimmy with these parts, and that is again a bit of the issue, the same issue with the linear interpolation of the joints and the blend shape. It has the same problems with that. So that's also something to be aware of, and that's why you really want to have joints driving the overall deformation, have that looking nice, have it like deforming nicely, have it sliding nicely and all that, and then you just come in and correct up your fine details with blend shapes. So just now this holds up a lot better, and you can do more blend shapes. You can add in more blend shapes for when you come in, like if you need to like close it completely, like really a whole lot, you can add in more. You can also set the different values. So for instance here, if you had the blend shape looking really nasty, you could go in and say, I don't want it to be 0.745 at this point. I want it to be perhaps a little bit closer in, like this, 0.5 perhaps. So you can go in that and then key, and that will basically set a new keyframe in the animation that's driving this. And the animation isn't being driven by time, but it's being driven by this attribute. So now we'll see that it pops in, the blend shape pops in like a bit later. So that's how you can control it, and again that's where the blend shapes are a bit finicky because you really have to like work on them. Okay, so I think that's one thing that you really got to go in and do is add in some more like helper joints and perhaps some blend shapes. Look into doing corrective blend shaping. That's something that's really useful. And also, as a general note, I probably would want this to be a tiny bit more subdivided. I've got another mesh that's a pretty good reference. I quite like this mesh. It's got a pretty nice edge flow going on, got nice definition, It's got a pretty decent layout going on, and it's got a nice resolution going on, and you've got enough like vertices and edge loops to do some deformation on this around the knees and everything. And that's the really important thing to remember, is that I really despise having really blocky models where most of it is just done by 3 smoothing. But my mantra when it comes to models is basically that the model without 3 smooth should do the overall motion. Like the difference between a 1 smooth and a 3 smooth should just be that it softens up a bit. Like the overall actual um, silhouette is what I'm trying to think about, is shouldn't be affected. If we look at like the spine, if we think about this, is okay, you've got your root joint here, which is okay, it's going to be influencing this. Then you got like your spine A joint that will influence this, but then what's this going to influence? There's not even an edge loop here for it to work on. Then you got this, which should influence this up here. Um, and you can see, which is what it's doing pretty much. If I just do that quickly. If you do that, then you get all of this like collapsing and volume loss just from like a really simple like movement up here. And if you have like a twist going on as well, it's just, yeah, it could work, but in most of the time you want more divisions in here. You want more to be able to work with. You want more just so that you can fix up with blend shapes as well. And I'd recommend, this is the Hippodrome model that you can get from hippodrome.com, and that also has a lot of great that site has a lot of great resources on how to place your joints as well. And that's another thing, is that your joint layout is looking a bit off in some places, especially like the clavicle. It's really far out. It's a bit of a strange place to have it. Again, it's like, it can work for cartooning characters, all depending on what you want, but normally you'd want the clavicle to be a lot further in, especially if you're doing like somewhat realistic rigging. Especially for all rigging, you want the clavicle to be further in, and for realistic, you'd want it to be a lot further out. If you feel on like your chest and you move like your shoulders up and down, you can feel where your clavicle is. It's really at the very front of your rib cage as well. So you gotta remember that it needs to be on top of all of this mass. And yeah, you'd want your shoulder to be a tiny bit more in as well, probably. And your wrist is something that you'd probably want. It works okay now with if we do the skinning of this to be like a completely, let me see what you got here. Just expand my selection a bit. Like it works okay if I do, if I do this. No, not even. Your mesh really isn't centered. So either you gotta add in more edge loops so that this wrist can, so that this outer part of your shirt can rotate with the hand, or you gotta, yeah, your joint is completely off. I'm not sure if that's where you placed it, but it should really be in the center of the hand more. So if you just do, yeah, if we just do like this edge loop back here, and we do this here. You'd probably want it to be more something like that. Something that I often do is I just do select a bunch of edge loops or verts like that, and then I just do like cluster. That basically just gives you a nice little place where you can snap your joints to, which is really useful for things like fingers as well, to get like completely in the center of it. I haven't really had a look at this, but I guess this looks okay. Yeah, so you'd want it to be, for fingers, you would often try to either keep it in the center or a bit up, like 2/3 up. And you definitely want 3 edge loops, the same as with the elbow. You won't kind of want to follow the finger completely, you want one to follow this, and then you want one in between to soften out that transition, and like this could also soften up a bit as well. But it's all about keeping that volume and really dictating that. Um, yeah, also your head position is a bit off if we go back and look at this other file. So you'd want your head position to be kind of more up here, like your head pivots from. I'm not sure about this one. Yeah, you'd want it to be in this sort of area. Like if you imagine like a ball of the size of the head, like kind of where the bottom of the ball would be, is kind of where your skull rotates from. It's kind of like right underneath your ear. And you also want a neck joint, and probably like a neck midpoint as well. You don't really have a neck point here now, so when you're doing this, you're just completely rotating the head. You don't have the ability to like just rotate the head forwards and no, sorry, rotate the neck forward, but keeping the head looking like this, like keeping it straight. Right now, you can only do this up and down, side to side. You can't move it forward. It's just like a couple of pointers on that, and yeah, that might be okay. You a lot of times you got your spine really straight, which I guess can work for this character as well. Um, if you go back and look, you'd normally want your spine to be quite at the back to try and follow your vertebrae, your actually spine. But for cartoony characters, you can go a bit more centering. But for realistic, you'd want it to follow the spine a bit more. And also, it's important to think about that you got like this big like cage, your rib cage, that basically doesn't move, or it doesn't bend or flexy that much as the rest of your body. So you will have like really large mass here. Um, and yeah, your joints, your knees are way too forward. They should be like this placement was just to do a bit of to fake some skinning, but you want it to be like more in the middle of the. If I just turn off this, you want it to be a bit more like here. And again, it's the same for the knees. You want to have the same, like, you'd want at least this 3 edge loops in bendy stuff like this. Also for the arm. Now, I guess we're not really gonna get this. If I just add in a pull vector to constrain pull vector Now, if I do like this, and I rotate the arm down, so this is also another issue is, okay, we got this working fine, and if you fix up like the hand, all that is good, but then you've got the rest of this upper part here as well, which is let me just see. If I just skin this up, losing it, I'm losing it. So you're getting a lot of the volume loss. You can see you're starting to like really pull things around here, and it's just really quickly starting to look really shabby. And again, that's your lack of resolution and the fact that you should really have like twist joints going down here, which you can use to like spread out the rotation. Now, you can try to just like smooth it in between. Let me just see if I can get my NG Skin Tools, which is an absolutely awesome plugin, which I highly recommend. So if I just... So now the skinning is like 50% in between here, and you can see it softens up the drastic transition. Sorry, I can't really speak now. But again, you're getting the same problem that you're losing volume here. It's not as crazy as with this previous example, but it's still significant, and it's something that you will notice, and especially see if we're like going down. You can see it now, it really starts to like flatten out because this clavicle is trying to keep all these vertices up here, but the arm is pulling the rest of them like 50% down. You can really see it here now. So that's why I say don't work in 3 smooth, work in like 1, like, and that will just tell you so much more what's going on here. So yeah, I'd really recommend that you look into the ribbon setup is a good one, or I think digital tutors call it like the flexi plane, which is basically doing a NURB surface with some hair follicles on there, which gives you a really nice twist where you can distribute, you can parent joints underneath that, and you can have it driven, and with that you can also get bendy arms, which is really cool. So I'd recommend having a look at that. That's something that you can also do for your spine to get like a really nice spread, evenly spread of your joints in your spine. So even if you got like some crazy rotations going on, then that would be fine. Another thing that I just noticed now is that you got your root joint here, but then, which moves the whole thing, and then you got your spine A here. To be honest, you want your spine J to be exactly on top of the root joint. That way you can rotate like your pelvis, and but you can also rotate your spine from this point. Right now you can't really do that unless you add in some extra setups that wouldn't really be necessary. I'd recommend just having spine A joint exactly on top of your root joint. Yeah, I'm not really sure if there's too much else to say. I'd recommend having, yeah. Yeah, your ball joint would probably be a bit further. It's, if you look again, like on your foot, you kind of rotate it from a bit further forward. So if you see here, this, so you'd kind of be in like this, across this plane and somewhere. And here you can see that I've added in this. If I just skin this up real quick. See that now this allows me to do like a quick little, like, I can do the rotation from the pelvis there, and that's just going to be really useful for a lot of like bendy motions. Really crap skinning, even worse skinning, but sorry, you can see my point here now. You start to get, you can really focus on these, having those driven nicely, and then you have your, you can have your clavicle underneath, no sorry, your root joint drive the hips. If you've got something that's controlling the rotation of this, then you will get, you can get like a nice little wiggly booty effect going on as well if you need it. So oops. Yeah, let me think if there's anything else. So speaking of that, I could show you like a rig that I did ages ago, which is a really simple basic rig as well, which has some of these. I've got like a blend shape to do a corrective on the arms. I did this in uni like ages ago. So it's a really straightforward rig with pretty much exactly the same setup that you have. I just have the controls on it and so on. So here you can see I've got like 5 extra joints that I've spread across my forearm and my upper arm to help distribute the blend. So you see when I rotate the arm, I get this nice like even distribution of the forearm, but when I rotate down, it doesn't like collapse in. I'm like, oh my god, this getting is horrible. I haven't looked at this in a while. And that's the problem if you take like, as you noticed on your rig, if you do like if you skin your wrist like 50% up here, and then you rotate it, and it's like, oh man, that looks amazing. But then as soon as you do this, then this whole thing will just like lift up 50%. So you really need some joints down here that will be driven only around this area to follow your wrist. And the same for like the upper arm. Oh Christ, this skinning is so bad. I'm sorry, I'm just getting some really crappy flashbacks now. So you can see also when I rotate my arm around, it distributes out these joints. You can see that this joint up here is completely static to up here. So I can basically, oops, and I'll turn on this. So this should be like painted pretty much completely solid here so that it doesn't move around at all up in this area. Wow, the skinning was even worse than I remembered. Oops. Gotta update my anti-skin tools. If I just relax this whole thing, relax the crap out of it. And that just really helps you maintain the volume a lot better and just get nice deformations. And again, it's only following around that, it's just rotating around and then following your arm completely. So when I move around, it does everything that you'd expect, but it doesn't follow this twist. So I can do my twisty, rotate my arm around, and it just stays completely still here, but it rotates nicely with the elbow. You can see I've got like a corrective as well there for my elbow, and I named these horribly. So you can see I'm doing the same thing, like pushing that out. I really should have like pushed this out as well, but I didn't know better. And for this, what you can do is on your, if you do like a corrective, you can just try and like slide some of this a bit, perhaps a bit, just get a bit more like movement in it, like do like the bicep up a bit, like things like that. And remember to get this like nice and sharp, all depending on how your character looks. Um, yeah. Man, this rig was horrible. I think that should be some guides for you, I hope. I wonder how this looks if we do it. Oh, yeah, I should have really remembered where I put this. If we do like a mesh smooth on it. Yeah, like just doing a mesh smooth. I think this already looks a lot better. You've got a lot more resolution to work with here. You've got better resolution here. And on the fingers as well, you see now we've got like these nice 3 edge loops going on here. Yeah, you probably could remove, I guess this is from when you were doing like 1/2, that you could remove this side a bit, just to make it look a bit more, the more like same size that you can make your faces, the better. You can see here on this one you got a lot of, they're not like massively large difference on all of these. So just rotate this back up. They're all like fairly the same size. Of course you got like a lot more density in the face and such, but mostly around the same area. They're pretty much like the same size, so you know that you can get the same kind of deformation results out from the whole thing. And that's really important as well, to be able to know that. And when you do like a decent joint placement as well, a lot of the skinning will just work for you. So if I just do like a really quick like smooth here now, like this just works okay-ish. You know, like of course you're losing a lot of volume when you're going down, but like the overall gross movement of that isn't too shabby. Um, so yeah, I'd recommend that you delete that up perhaps. I'd probably do an edge slide on this to get it like a bit more symmetrical here. Perhaps just try and get these a bit back to get like a bit more softness and roundness to that character. That's like something that you see a lot as well when people do box modeling. Is that the characters tend to be very boxy, or blocky. That's probably a better way of saying it. Like that might be the style that you're going for, but it's something that you see very often. Let me just turn down this displacement. Just gonna like smooth this up a tiny bit, just to like see what we can get with this. Just smooth this in a bit. And to be honest, I think that looks a bit better already. It's not as like sharp and boxy, blocky as you had before, and that's one of the advantages when you model this low poly as well, that you can really like shape this really quickly, and then I'd say do like sorry, do mesh smooth on it afterwards. Just to have something like this is pretty decent. It just gives you that extra topology to work with. Yeah, completely messed up your legs. Sorry about that. Yeah, you got this whole thing in like one geo as well now, which is fine. I think you separate out the head. No, that would probably be something to look into as well. It could be a really good idea just to separate them so that you don't have to deal with the same like, ooh, all these lines they need to run down here, or perhaps just like end them at some point so that you can have a really high-res face, but you don't need to have all those lines going like straight down. You could just like end them up here. If you start to like merge vertices together like this, then suddenly you can just get rid of that's a couple of words on top of each other that's not merged. So then you can start to like having just one of these edge loops go down here. Which, have you done some of this? Yeah, I'd recommend for something like this, it would be really good to just separate out the head as well. You could just do an edge loop and do like edit mesh edge detach, and if you do then mesh separate. Oh, I didn't want to do it. Well, whoopsie. You could also just duplicate it and delete all the faces on one of the models. It's just a bit nicer sometimes to be working with two models, and especially if you got one piece that is cloth and one that's supposed to be your body. Like I said, then you don't really have to worry about like all these edge loops going over here and like working together to make all of this. And if you need more edge loops the for the cloth all of a sudden, then you don't have to like worry about how to make all that work up here. And also you could just do the hair as a new piece as well, instead of having to do all this stuff. Again, like that's completely up to you, the style that you want to go for, but that's some of my thoughts on this. And holy crap, this is for 2 minutes now, and it's basically a TV episode, so check me out on your local TV channel. It's gonna be there soon. Hopefully not. Yeah, I hope this gave you some ideas, some pointers. I've rambled a ton now, so let me know if there's anything else that I can help with, or anybody else. Let us know, and hopefully this gives you some good advice going forward. Cool, see you on the forums.